All right, Lindsay, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it. First off, if you could tell the Friends with Wheels audience a little bit about yourself and how you started in the work that you do today.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay Taylor. Gosh, I always love this question. Like, who are you? I always start with I'm human, meaning no different than you listening. Nobody gets through this life unscathed. We all face struggles. We all face joy. So we all experience awesome things in life and hard things in life, right? And so I always just start with that. Like, I'm just an ordinary individual, just like you all listening. I am a mom. The most favorite thing about me is I'm a mom to four kids. Our oldest son, we actually tragically lost, though, four and a
Mm.
half years ago to a fentanyl overdose. So
Sorry
I
to
have
hear that.
walked, thank you. Yeah. So I've walked the journey with grief and understand that very personally. But professionally, I've always been drawn. I say I have a heart for the hurting and a love for the lost. And when I was a child, I was very drawn to, we had a family friend that did foster care, and I was drawn to those kids. And so I knew from a pretty early age I wanted to become a social worker and help kids in the foster care system. And so that's what I did. So I started out my career in child welfare. And so I became a social worker, started out in child welfare, and then I eventually moved into school social work. And I would end up going into private practice, eventually doing therapy. So I ended up getting licensed, got my master's, got licensed. And so now I do therapy. And like I said, I sit with individuals every day facing life's battles, right? Like we all have face them. And um, I feel like professionally it's such a calling, but also I've walked many of the paths that I'm helping my clients with personally. And so, yeah, it's a little bit about me and how I got into doing therapy.
hmm So tell me a little bit about the work that you do now. You said you were involved in school social work?
Yeah.
Hmm
Yeah. Yeah, so actually when I did school social work, that was over the time, it was pre-COVID. I started in 2018, but then worked in the school through COVID. And it was during that time that we really saw our whole country. But again, I was working with the teens, so I really saw it impact our youth, their mental health declining, right? And so during that time, I helped a lot of students who were struggling with thoughts of suicide. And so that would end up becoming my specialty. At the time when I was working in the school, we're just essentially doing brief counseling and like triaging, like referring students to counseling, but we're not doing clinical work in a school setting. So I just remember feeling like, first of all, there wasn't a lot of places to send these kids for help. Even many therapists are uncomfortable with treating individuals struggling with thoughts of suicide. So it was hard to find like the right help for these kiddos. Um, and so I just remember feeling like, how do I help these kids? And so, long story short, our school district would ironically end up partnering with a suicide treatment center. It's the first of its kind. They originated in Ohio. They opened their first office in 2020 in Ohio. And then in Chandler, Arizona, which is where I live, we would be the second location to open in the nation. And our school district would partner with the Hope Institute. So I ended up transitioning to the Hope Institute again, so specializing in suicide specifically. It's a suicide treatment center. And being that it was in partnership with the school district, we saw a lot of kids and teens, but it was open to the whole community. So essentially, my work led me, I would have never told you that. Like, if, the reason I went into the profession, like I said, was really to help with like foster kiddos. I never would have thought I would get into specializing in suicide, but that has become a deep, deep passion of mine. And so a lot of clients I see, that's definitely a struggle that they're facing. But I'm pretty diverse in who I can see. I have my first couples right now, so I'm doing some couples therapy. And then I see adults. I have a lot of experience in my prior job to the school. I forgot this part. I worked in adoption for a while, case managing birth moms that were placing their child for adoption. And many of them were doing an adoption because they were homeless, on drugs, some of them incarcerated. So I have some experience with like working with those incarcerated and those struggling with substance use. So I do work with adults as well. And yeah, that's a little bit. I see a variety of people in my private practice at this point, but I would say people struggling with suicidal ideation, grief, those are some of like the big things that I'm passionate about at this point.
hmm And for those particular populations, what modalities do you use for those populations?
Yeah, so for treating suicide, there's actually only four evidence-based models, and so I use two of the most effective models. One is called CAMS. It stands for Collaborative Assessment and Management of Suicidality. It's a mouthful, but that really helps us identify what are the client's drivers, and drivers are what's leading them to have the thoughts of suicide, and then we base the whole treatment plan around that. So we're really trying to get to the root and treat what's leading to the suicidality. So the CAMS is kind of like the model that guides our sessions. And then dialectical behavioral therapy is what we incorporate in the therapeutic sense to help individuals struggling. Dialectical behavioral therapy is great because it works with helping people learn how to manage their emotions, distress tolerance, so how to handle difficult things in life, painful things, crisis, interpersonal effectiveness, so relationship struggles. We know that that can be a cause a lot of times, and then there's mindfulness as a component of that, and then dialectics itself, which I love. Dialectics is this idea that two things that seem opposing can both hold truth. So,
Mm.
like, I can experience pain and grief and sorrow and also experience joy in my life at the same time. Like, those things aren't separate. They can coexist. And so dialectics helps us find like this middle path, not have so much black and white thinking, and realize that like life is pain and joy all at the same time. And so love DBT, so I use a lot of that for that. I do some CBT, working with our thoughts, challenging maladaptive thought patterns, or maladaptive, that's kind of a clinical word. But these negative core beliefs that we take on and really trying to rewire our thought process and how we function in that way. I do EMDR as well. So for those that have experienced trauma, EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And really, what that does is it helps. We have neural pathways in our brain. And so when we go through traumatic experiences or hard things, it sticks in our brain, and it can cause all these different struggles. And so EMDR helps to kind of rewire those pathways and get things moving. And so it doesn't remove the traumatic event, it doesn't get rid of those memories, but it kind of helps your brain to see it in a different way, to attach a better belief to it. And so that can be really helpful for people that have experienced trauma or been through traumatic things. So I do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Which has been your favorite between like the CAMS and the dialectical behavioral therapy aspect?
Yeah. So actually, we pair them because CAMS itself is not a treatment per se. It's
Mm.
just like a model to follow. Like it's a questionnaire. So where every time a client comes in with CAMS, we're rating their level of hopelessness, we're rating their self-hate, we're rating their risk of suicide. So it's like CAMS is like a very specific rating. Their reasons for dying, their reasons for living, because we're also connecting them, trying to help them connect to life. So CAMS is a very structured, almost like assessment, if you will. And then
Mm-hmm.
again, it helps us identify the client's drivers. And then DBT is what we're using to actually treat the driver. So let's say, for example, the driver is the client is struggling with low self-worth, self-hate. Then we're using DBT to help treat that self-hate, that low self-worth. So yeah, that we use them in conjunction. So I love them both together. They work so well together.
Yeah, now that you mention it, CAMS is
Yeah.
similar to attachment style therapy because
Yeah.
like they ask you a bunch of questions. How's your relationship with your mother, your father, and blah blah blah, and how do you sort of predict, your relationship uh forming, I guess.
Yes. And I actually, when you said attachment, it reminded me of IFS, internal family systems therapy, which I do a lot of too. I love like parts work, and that can be really helpful for identifying like our inner child and these parts of us that are wounded and helping to love them back to life, if you will. So I love IFS too.
Mm-hmm. So what have
Hmm.
clients told you about like, because you said you work with people who are struggling with thoughts of suicide and that kind of stuff. So like
Yeah.
what have they told you? Um,
Yeah. Um, Gosh, I feel like it's such a complex issue. So, suicide at its root is escapism, right? So it's, this is too much, too hard, can't handle this. And it's just this desire to escape the pain, your situation, whatever it is that's causing your soul to be at disrest. So, I mean, common things. I think it's hard to pinpoint fully what leads to that, but I actually wrote a book on this, and the three things that I boiled it down to is feeling like they don't belong, feeling alone, feeling like they're not worthy, not good enough. That's a big thing that I hear. Like I don't matter. I'm not good enough. And then the third thing is high psychological pain and feeling like they can't cope with that pain that they're experiencing, that psychological pain. So I would say that the three common things I hear, like there's a variety of different reasons and things that lead people to have thoughts of suicide, but I would say they all fall under either the not feeling worthy, not feeling like they belong, like in isolation and alone falls into that, like lacking connection, all of that falls in the not belonging, and then the high psychological pain and just feeling like they can't cope with that pain.
What's the name of the book?
It's called The Rise of a Soul Soldier.
What inspired you to write it?
Ooh, well, again, it's been such a profound journey walking, sitting with people in the depths of darkness, honestly, and just holding that space for them and trying to bring light and hope to those spaces. And so it's just been such an honor to sit beside people in that struggle and to just hold that space because not a lot of people can do that. It's hard, right? But I feel like it's a gift God's given me to sit with these people. And so I was just very inspired by like the resilience of the clients that I've seen, like that suicide is 100% preventable. And I have seen people recover from it. And so I just want to spread that hope as well, right? Like, even though I just mentioned, like, when I'm helping clients and they're in that space, yes, it's full of despair and all of those things, but there's also hope on the other side of it and people recover. So I wanted to write a book where I shared people's stories of over. So the book is all about helping people through life's deepest battles, is what I call it, like what I frame it as, that being suicidal ideation, addiction, grief, and then life's deepest challenges. And so we all face battles is the idea of this book. Um, and so I shared people's stories who have overcome those battles with suicidal ideation, addiction, and then walking my own journey of grief, right? Like losing my son to a fentanyl overdose. So the book is like part memoir, it's part my story, and then it's broken into four parts. And the second part is like the hope part, like people who have overcome the battles. I share their stories. And then the third part is the reader exploring their own struggles and helping them work through that. There's a lot of journal prompting in it. And then the fourth part is like life beyond the battle. So yeah, that's what inspired me, just my own professional and personal experience.
I have to go read it and check it out.
Yeah, definitely. And I was really inspired. I just have to say, hearing like what you do with this podcast, and I need to listen to some episodes, but I actually have a chronic condition, disability that I'll have the rest of my life. I was born with it. And I will say that that is also a struggle that will lead people to have thoughts of suicide is chronic illness and disabilities and that sort of thing. And so I've had just a variety of experience in my life, personally and professionally, that has led me to this work.
Yeah, which is my next question is, what have you learned
Yeah.
in doing this work?
Oh, um, so much, so much. But I'm going to say this, that humans are resilient, truly. Even though we have sadly lost people to these battles that I'm talking about, to addiction, to suicidal ideation, um, I have seen so many people recover, and I've seen so many people come into my office one way, feeling down in the deepest depths of despair, hopelessness, brokenness, whatever it is that they're facing, struggles in their relationships, and I see them recover, and I see them heal, and I see them grow and expand as people and their souls, and I just see. I always say this work has taught me what it is to be human and to be humane. So like I relate with them on the human level, like human to human. Like I said, none of us get through this life unscathed, but then to be humane, to like serve people and to sit with them in that place and to see them recover. I'm just totally amazed by how resilient we are as humans.
And my next question is, is there something on your bucket list that you're thinking like, I want to learn this a little bit more. I'm curious to know what this is about.
That's a good question. I I'm always learning. I think we're lifelong learners, right? Like
Yeah.
I will never stop learning and growing, and so I have such an appetite for continually expanding, personally, professionally, in all those areas. Um, I think like at the moment, what is in the depths of my heart is to go serve in prison, work with that population. I think that that's a population that a lot of people uh, write off, right? Or, struggle to connect with. And so I would love to get more into prison work and helping inmates recover and heal. Again, when I say human to human, like ultimately, maybe we've all had different struggles that lead us to different places in our lives, but they are human too, who made rough decisions based on whatever. I'm sure, a lot of them have past and trauma and all the things and doesn't make it okay, right? Like what they've done or whatever that's led them there. But I just have such a heart for also reaching those people. And so I think that that is a population and an area that I want to grow in more and learn more about and expand in. But I'm just eager to always, like I said, basically go to the spaces where people are the most hurting and meet them there and love them there.
hmm And what tips and advice would you give to those, who are struggling or currently in that space of like, I don't know what to do, that kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things I love about DBT and dialectics is this idea that pain is temporary, right? There is some things we walk through in our life that are not, like when you lose somebody, obviously that person's not coming back. And so there is struggles that we face that can be permanent, but so much of what we face in life is temporary. And a lot of times there's a quote that says something like, life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we think about it. And so there
hmm
is so much power in how we handle our circumstances and how we think about our circumstances. Like we can't always change what happens to us, but we can change how we think about it and what we do with it. And like with my son, with losing him, I really found that there is purpose to pain. I wouldn't be who I am today without walking through that experience. I wouldn't have expanded and grown and carried his story on in a way that's helping now save other people's lives. And so, anyway, I think the pain that we walk through has purpose. And I think it's what we do with it. Like, we don't always get to choose, like I said, what happens to us, but we can grow from it. And to know that so much of what we walk through in life is temporary. So, like, if somebody listening is like in like the deep depths of despair right now, just knowing that like that's not permanent, like it won't be like that forever. And I would just encourage you to like reach out for help. There is people out there that can help, want to help. There's hope. Like I think that needs to be. It's so. I know that feels kind of cliche. Like you hear it a lot, but there really is. And like I said, I've seen people recover. And I think the final thing I want to say to this point, and I share this in my book, that the odds of us being born is 1 in 400 trillion. So, like with our unique story, our unique DNA, our essence, it's 1 in 400 trillion. That means that we're not an accident. We're quite literally a living, breathing miracle. And so, to anybody listening to this, I just want you to know if you feel like you're not worth it, you don't belong, you are worth it, you do belong, you're a miracle.
And where can people get a copy of the book?
On Amazon. Yep. So if you just search up The Rise of the Soul Soldier, it is on Amazon. And I also have an Instagram. So, you can follow me on there. I'm in the process of writing my second book, which will be out at the first of the year. That one's called Plot Twist: The Freedom You Never Saw Coming. And so that's essentially this idea that we're all prisoners to something. Like I said, I want to work with actual prisoners, but whether it's mental, financial, circumstantial, addiction, like we all are prisoners to something. And so it's helping people break free and find freedom, even in the middle of their mess. Like you don't have to be over your struggle to find freedom. So yeah, you can
Mm-hmm.
find me on Instagram too at it's _soul_soldier.
Okay, I'll make sure to add that in the notes.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Okay.